Just because I had time on you. And as we begin to walk this journey with Jesus, we walk it knowing that every moment that Jesus was walking, he was walking towards the cross. At every moment of Jesus' ministry, everything that Jesus did was leading him and pointing him towards the cross. And so as we study and as we learn and as we think on the life of Jesus and think on what it was that Jesus was doing, we remember that he knew that he was going to die. He knew that Good Friday was coming. And yet everything in his life chose to reflect the sacrifice that he would make in his death. Everything about what Jesus did while he was here reflected his attitude towards why he was here, towards his life in general, and that was to be a sacrifice for you and I. So, 2 weeks ago we talked about Jesus' baptism. We talked about God identifying Jesus as who he was. And last week we talked about Jesus being tempted in the wilderness, and we talked about the ways in which that we believe in who God is, the ways in which we structure our life based on that faith. And so Jesus comes out of the wilderness, and it's time to get down to business, right? Gone through baptism, we've gone through the temptation, and it's time for him to do things. So we're going to pick up in Matthew 4 this morning, Matthew 4 starting in verse 18. It says this: As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. All at once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two brothers, James son of Zebedee and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their rafts. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, healing every disease and sickness among the people. News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed, and he healed them. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and the region across the Jordan followed him. So this is how Jesus got himself started. He said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to call myself some disciples. I'm going to get some people around me, and we're going to do this together. And it's the very first thing that he does. And it's important for us to land here where we look at who Jesus was and what he was doing. We come to this sort of question. Did Jesus need help? Was there anything that Jesus was lacking as a person to teach these things and do these miracles? Well, of course not. We know that Jesus, being both fully man and fully God, was completely prepared for all of the things that God would have sent him to do, for all the things that he's going to encounter during his time here on earth. And so yet it begs the question, the very first thing Jesus does is get other people around him. The very first thing he does is assemble a team. And it's interesting. Because too often in our lives, both in church and out of church, we believe and we perceive ourselves to need this sense of independent accomplishment. This sense of, I am going to do these things, and I am going to accomplish these things, and I am going to get it done, and I am going to carry the weight on my back, and I. We get this sense of, if we're going to feel a sense of accomplishment about anything, we have to do it ourselves, alone. We have to be trailblazing, maverick, whatever you want to call yourself. I'm as guilty of this as anybody. I tend to be one of those people that just thinks, I have a vision, I have an idea, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be wildly successful because I have this idea and I have this plan, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. When the truth of the matter is, the very, very first thing Jesus did was get other people around him. The very, very first thing that Jesus did was say, I don't want to do this alone. My goal is to not be doing the work that God has set in front of me alone. And so for you and I, as we seek to live like Jesus, as we seek to serve like Jesus, as we seek to be sacrificial like Jesus is, this is an important note. This is important for us to notice because we were not meant to do this life alone. We were not created to be alone. You go back to Genesis, God the Father says it is not good for man to be alone. Not good. I believe the Spanish version says, no bueno. Not good for man to be alone. And so as we seek to live like Jesus and serve like Jesus, the first thing we got to know is we got to have people around us. We got to have teammates. We got to have friends. We got to have people that we are co-laboring alongside with. Because if we don't, it's just harder. It's just worse. You know, I used to, when I would teach, we would raise money for senior trips. And I used to tell the kids, I said, yeah, and in order to go on this trip, we're going to need about $10,000 to go on this trip. I said, listen, there's a lot of ways to make $10,000. A lot of ways in this world to make $10,000. And we're going to try and find the easiest way. I said, listen, I said, if we want to, instead of doing it, we could cancel all these fundraisers and we could all just go get a minimum wage job and work a minimum wage job in addition to going to school, and eventually we'd raise $10,000. I said, but that is not a good way to make $10,000. I said, listen, if we want to, we could get, 100,000 pop cans. We could raise $10,000. But that's not a great way to raise $10,000 either. I said, let's do this in a way that's going to accomplish our goal, but do it in the best way possible. See, there's a lot of ways to serve the Lord. But why wouldn't we want to do it in the best way possible? Why wouldn't we want to do it in the way that says, God, I want to honor you, and I want to minister like Jesus did. I don't want to do it alone. So we get into Jesus calling the disciples, and this is an interesting story. Because usually, right, as people who, read the Bible, and especially, being somebody who reads the Bible, prepares sermons, and, wants to minister to people, wants to give people, what's really in the Bible, wants to help people understand. You read the Bible and you think, okay, here's what I'm thinking, okay, what is Jesus looking for in disciples? I'm going to read this passage, I'm going to really analyze it, really take the spiritual scalpel out, really skewer this one apart and say, what is Jesus looking for in disciples? And this is what the book of Matthew gives me. It says, Jesus was walking by the side of the Sea of Galilee. He saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. And at once they left their nets and followed him. And I'm reading this going, okay, I'm not getting a lot out of this here. I'm not getting a lot of character traits of the disciples. I'm not getting a lot of what Jesus resume specifics was looking for. I'm just not getting a lot of what the job requirements for being a disciple of Jesus. And I keep going back to it. And so the first one it says, well, they were brothers, and they were fishermen. Okay. Then the second said, they were brothers, and they were fishermen. And I begin to think Jesus has a type. I think he's looking for fishing brothers. And I'm reading that and I'm going, no, Lord, that can't be right. I can't get up on Sunday and tell the church that the people that you're looking for to use in ministry are brothers who fish. That's not going to make any sense. People aren't going to like that sermon. That's not going to embolden anybody's spirit. But keep praying and keep asking, Lord, what is it that you're looking for in disciples? What is it that you're looking for in followers? And also, Lord, what is it that I ought to be looking for? What is it that I ought to be looking for in teammates and friends and people that I want to do ministry with? And I think my problem was that I was looking on the wrong sides of these verses. And I think we do too sometimes. Too often, we are looking for a specific thing. Right? I'm looking to go, what are the character traits? It's nice that we're having church in the F-14 hangar this morning. Saying, what are the character traits of someone? What are the character traits of someone who I want to minister with? What are the character traits? God, what are you looking for? And too often we're like that, saying, Lord, I want people who are like this. I want people who have this skill set. I want people who can do this. Lord, I want people who can do that. Lord, send me friends who can do this. Send me Send me teammates and send me people who can do these, and we can do this together. And the most important part of these verses isn't the qualifications that Peter and John and those guys had. It was simply the end of the verses. Verse 20 says this, "And once they left their nets and followed him." And verse 22 says this, "And immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him." God is not interested in your resume. God is not interested in all of the things that you label yourself as, all of the things that you have built yourself up as, all the ways in which we try and prove ourselves and justify ourselves to each other and to the world. It's just not God's business. God's interest in you is because you're his child. And his requirement for you is your willingness to follow. That's the job requirement. Doesn't matter about your education level, doesn't matter about your experience level, doesn't matter about your special skills, doesn't matter about anything else that you may come to seek to define yourself as. Doesn't matter about any of the trophies on your shelf or the awards on your wall. God looks at you and says, will you come? Will you follow? But there's a second part to this. See, we could stop right there and people would feel good. People would leave here feeling nice and warm and fuzzy. People would leave here feeling like, okay, will you go? Will you follow? Okay, that's good. Let's pray. Let's get to eat early. But that's not where it ends. You see, because too often in the church, we have this conversation. And we say, will you follow? I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. So on and so forth. Will you follow the Lord? And we go, yes, Lord, I will follow. And then that's the end of it. But the truth of the matter is Jesus is calling you to follow him into something. Following Jesus isn't just an aimless pursuit. It's not like getting on the monorail at Disney World and just riding it around and around and around and going, well, I'm here, I'm at Disney World, I'm riding the monorail around, I'm doing great. No. You follow Jesus into plans and purposes. You follow Jesus into places where you are needed. You follow Jesus into places that are dark and desperate and not always the most delightful, to continue on with the alliteration there. You are going to follow Jesus into tough circumstances. And too often, we take for granted that this idea of following Jesus is following him to church, is following Jesus to Bible study, is following Jesus to places where I feel comfortable anyway. Listen, when the disciples agreed to follow Jesus, they were also following Jesus into his death and into his sacrifice. They weren't just agreeing to follow him to the temples and to the synagogues and to the healings, to the Sermon on the Mount, and to the feeding of the 5,000. They were following Jesus to the cross. And when we say that we want to follow Jesus, when we say that we have decided to follow Jesus, we have to remember that that doesn't just mean following him to places we want to go. That means we are following Jesus to where he knew he was going all along, to the cross. Sometimes we have to reevaluate the seriousness with which we take that commitment. What are we really saying? This is a struggle. Because our tendency as humans is to seek comfort, is to seek peace, is to seek the easy decision. I was just having a conversation last night. We went to a youth group fundraiser murder mystery dinner last night, which is a mouthful and was very fun. But I was talking with some friends of mine and talking about the will of God. We're talking about, sometimes people say, well, I just want to go with the peace. I just want to follow where I have peace. We were kind of laughing, and I said, listen, I'm a non-confrontational dude with anxiety problems. If all I ever do is follow the peace, I'll never accomplish anything. I'll stay home and watch Survivor all day long. Listen, I will clear off the DVR. If all I ever do is say, I want to feel peace, I just want to follow the peace, I'll never do anything difficult. I'll never do anything tough because it's not my instinct. And yet I know, as a disciple of Jesus Christ, I know as somebody who tries to serve the Lord, that sometimes I have to follow Jesus into places where I feel uncomfortable, where I don't want to be. You know, I tell a story a lot. My buddy DJ, who was here a couple weeks ago, served at First General Baptist downtown as the youth pastor. And pretty soon after being there, he started this Friday night ministry called The Alley. And it was for all sorts of kids from all over, and kids could come from anywhere, from any background, and they could come and they could just hang out on a Friday night in a safe environment. They had metal detectors. It was like crazy. Weekly they had issues with, kids bringing weapons and kids bringing drugs and all this stuff on a Friday night in the basement of First General Baptist Church of Flint. And it was, crazy. And I got a chance to speak there on a couple occasions. And let me tell you, it was wild. It was absolutely wild all the times I spoke there. It was, to this day, the most difficult situation I've ever spoken, bar none. Because with these kids, if you weren't engaging with them, it's not like they were going to ignore you. They were going to actively turn around and have conversations, just right there. If you said something confusing, they would absolutely shout out questions at you. Absolutely, there's no doubt. It was, to this day, some of the most fun I've ever had speaking. But to me, this is my experience. I grew up a church kid. I grew up a youth group kid. I grew up in places that were very safe. In places that were intentionally very free of things like violence and drugs and these sorts of things. And yet, that wasn't where the Lord was calling me. Wasn't where the Lord was sending me. And so in that situation, I had to go someplace different. It's not wrong or bad to want to be comfortable. It's not wrong or bad to want to be in familiar places. It's wrong to put the desire for comfort in front of the desire to do God's will. Which returns us back to our original point. What is God looking for in disciples and followers? He's looking for people willing to go. He's looking for people willing to serve. And the cool thing is out of that, you get what we read in these next verses. Jesus goes throughout Galilee. He teaches in synagogues. He proclaims the good news of the kingdom, healing every disease and sickness among the people. News abroad and spreads all over Syria. People are brought to him with various diseases, suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, the paralyzed, and he healed them. Jesus ascends into heaven and says, greater things will you do than even I did. Jesus says to Peter, a guy who was just on a boat, just a regular dude fishing on a boat, it won't be very long after this, Jesus will say to him, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. A fisherman. A regular dude. And the only thing that set him apart was his willingness to go. You see, I think about this stuff all the time. Being somebody who, likes stories, I'm a movie guy, I'm a writer, sort of thing. I always think about, you're talking about the Sea of Galilee. You're talking about one of the main water hubs of that day. When Jesus went to the Sea of Galilee that day, how many boats were out there? Probably like a ton. A ton of boats. How many fishermen were out there? A whole bunch. That would have been their source of income. A primary source of income for people in that day would have been fishing. It's not even fish. Church, it's not like Jesus went to the Sea of Galilee and found the only 4 dudes out on the water that day and said, come be my disciples. It's not how it works. It's not like Jesus went out there and said, well, I guess I'll settle for this. Jesus went to the Sea of Galilee. He looked And there was some spark, something that he saw in these men. Maybe it was their willingness to go. Maybe it was something that the Father showed him. I'm not entirely sure. But there was something specific that Jesus said, or Jesus saw in them, and called them. I look at you and I today. And I don't know everybody's history here. I don't know what everybody's history with God is, with the church is, with religion in general is. But there's something that has led you here today. I don't know what it is. It's something different for each and every one of us. My path here today was different than I thought my life path would be. Certainly didn't see myself here at 27 doing this, what I get to do every day. It's amazing. And I don't know what it is in me that led me to this place either. But I know that if God has led me to it, then it's right, whether I feel it or not. Church, you need to know this. When you are following God, He's going to lead you to places that are comfortable, places that are uncomfortable, places that are easy, places that are difficult, places that are comforting, places that are challenging. But they will always be right. They will always be for your good. And they will always be for a purpose. When I say they will be right, I don't mean they will always feel right. I mean, it will be where God has led you. When I say it will be for your good, I don't always mean it will feel good. But it will serve and work to make you holy. And so how do we live in response to this? How do we live in response to the way that Jesus led and guided and called people? How do we live in response? I have a couple thoughts. First, let's not buy into the myth of independentism. Let's not buy into the myth that God is calling you by yourself. Even these guys got called in pairs. Even these guys got called as brothers to go and to serve. The call that God has put in your life is not a secret password. It's not. The call that God has put into your life isn't something you have to bury deep inside of you and not share with anybody and hold on too tight, lest, like the wish that you make when you blow out your birthday candles, if you tell anybody, it's going to be ruined. The call of God on your life is meant to be shared and celebrated and collaborated with. It's meant that the people next to you, the people around you in your life, could support you, could build you up, could send you to where God has you. You weren't meant to do it alone. Second of all, when it comes to the way God looks at you, remember this. God does not see you as a resume. He doesn't see you as a list of qualifications. He doesn't see you as abilities and skills and successes and failures. He sees you as His child. There's no way to earn a better spot on God's team. You are already the MVP of God's team. And I know that's very children's church. And I know that's very Veggie Tales. But you know what? It's true. We took that step to children's church for a reason, because it was true and it was good. You are. You can't qualify yourself for a better spot on God's team. You can't qualify yourself for a higher spot in God's cabinet. You cannot qualify yourself for any more merit badges in the God Scouts than you already have. So you can quit trying. God called you the way you are because He wants you the way you are. And He likes you the way you are. And He needs you the way you are. And last but certainly not this, we remember this. That the only thing that we ever have to be is willing. We don't even have to be willing and able, because if we're willing, God will make us able. All we have to do is be willing to go. And sometimes being willing doesn't always look like we think it is. You know, I like to fancy myself as a guy who thinks, oh, here I am, Lord, send me into anything and anywhere. But I'm not always like that. Sometimes I'm hesitant. Sometimes I'm fearful. Sometimes I am not ready to go. But my willingness doesn't have to come in a perfect package. My willingness doesn't have to be super heroic. Sometimes willingness looks like being scared to death, but getting out of bed anyway. Sometimes willingness means feeling like absolute garbage, but putting your shoes on and leaving the house anyway. Sometimes willingness means fighting every voice in your head that says you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not qualified enough, you're not able enough, but doing it anyway. It doesn't have to come in a perfect package. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be the willingness to say, okay, Lord, I'm willing to leave behind my nets and follow you into anything and everything that you send me to. When I am afraid, when I doubt, when I don't feel good enough, I will follow you and I will trust you. Would you bow your head? Father, I'm so grateful that of all the places you have ever led me, you have never led me any place wrong. I'm so grateful that you have never led me any place bad. I'm so grateful that you have never led me any place that you didn't want me to go. So Lord, help me to go. Help me to be willing. Help me to surround myself with people who you would have me to go with. And for all of us as a congregation, as a church, help us to walk together. Help us to walk together in willingness and obedience, Lord. Help us to walk together in the trust that you are who you say you are, and you'll do everything you say you'll do. And help us to remember that we don't do it in our own power, but in your strength, and in your strength alone. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you all.